Hello and welcome. I know we're already diving into November, even though we just got started in October. So I hope you all are having a lovely start to your October. We are doing our November overview chat a little sooner in the month than I typically do for our other months. We have a lot going on coming up here in the next few weeks around here for our family and in Wondergarten land. So we had to push this one a little bit ahead. And of course, we also have some additional live chats coming up with winter overview planning, December overview. So I wanted to make sure things were nicely scattered. So if you're here, go ahead and say hello. Make sure everything looks and sounds good. We had a nice ease in this morning. So if you were here early, hopefully you enjoyed our little intro. Otherwise, I will get going pretty soon. I hope you all enjoyed our little merch launch. It sounded like that went really well. Everyone was able to get snag what they wanted to, which was really exciting. Some things going on around here just for some fun announcements. Next week, as I mentioned, we have some fun things coming up around here. Nathaniel will be heading over to DC next week to begin recording our Summer Songs album with Catherine and our producer. So that is going to be really exciting coming up. If you were here for our summer test group, you probably got a sense of some of those songs coming. There's some really, really incredible songs coming. So that's going to be a really fun week next week, but also one of the reasons why we pushed this November overview earlier in the month, since our next few weeks will be busy with him out of town. Hello, everyone. Thank you for saying hi and joining. It's great to have you here. All right, so November, we are getting started with our November overview chat. Hello, hello. I am actually going to start with our Chalkboard overview. So if you got your Autumn 2nd edition, our November, of course, is featured in our Autumn box here. Beautiful. So I'm going to show you this top down so you can see, and I'm just going to kind of talk through this. So in some of Nathaniel's chalkboards, he kind of depicts all 4 or a few of the stories playing out. But in this one, he decided to just feature this beautiful kind of culminating scene of the autumn feast here. So you see all of our gnomes and friends around the table with Sister Flame. Hamilton is in his new suit and Morrison has joined us. And we really just get this really beautiful view of autumn and the culmination of our autumn feast. So we get to see them around the table with their pies and all the things they've made. Beautiful cornucopia and leaves everywhere. And of course, so much of this still kind of encapsulates November. We have Leaf Week in November and Pie Week and Autumn Feast. So this still represents so much of the month of November, but instead of those kind of each scenes being depicted, we just have this one full, beautiful piece of art. And this is just definitely a favorite of ours. And you get to see them all together. I remember when he was making this chalkboard, I almost got emotional seeing them all around the table together kind of for the first time. So it's so fun. You can actually see, I know a lot of people have asked about the scale of how tall is everyone. You can kind of see here, this is a great depiction of how tall everyone is standing next to each other. So if you're making your own homemade little dolls, you can use this one as a reference. So our November board, of course, is stunning. And let's get into our weeks of November. So November as a whole is a nice kind of out-breath month, right? We have the anticipation of December coming and winter coming and all of the festivities and busyness and lovely things we have coming in December. So November is a little bit, we have just a nice little out-breath. So you'll notice, especially Leaf Week and Rain Week, just very calm things happening. We have a lot of repetitive activities. Of course, with Pie Week and Autumn Feast, we kind of ramp up again. But overall, we have a really, really sweet month that just really savors the last real month of autumn, which I can't already believe that we're already talking about our last month of autumn together. And it's been so fun to kick off our school year this week, or this year. So November, we have Leaf Week, Rain Week, Pie Week, and the Autumn Feast. Of course, the Autumn Feast here in the US is going to align right with your Thanksgiving. I know some Canadians have had some discussion of should we shuffle that week into October, because I believe your Thanksgiving is coming up. So I went over this a lot in our autumn planning, but you really have some 2 options here if you're Canadian. I want to just give you another few reminders of how you can make this work for your family. If you would like to shuffle that Autumn Feast week into early October, you certainly certainly can, but another way you can approach this is the autumn feast story is also a very sweet kind of culmination of autumn and saying goodnight to the garden. And because we don't actually mention Thanksgiving, I have seen a lot of Canadian families decide to leave that where it is and just honor the end of the month and the end of the season with that gratitude feast, even if it doesn't necessarily align with your Thanksgiving. But you can also look ahead to some of those recipes if you want to include them in your actual Thanksgiving celebrations for our Canadian friends. So keep that in mind as you're planning. Of course, if you didn't get a chance to listen to our autumn planning, definitely go ahead and re-listen to that in the replay library. Also got a lot of feedback from our October, the way we split up our October month by week for that replay library, that a lot of you enjoyed that. So we'll be doing that again for November. I will do one little craft demonstration for you today for our Autumn Feast woven placemats, just so you can see how that's done. But otherwise, like I said, November is kind of a nice chill month. So let's dive in. Leaf Week, Rain Week, Pie Week, and the Autumn Feast. Let's go ahead and jump right in to Leaf Week. Leaf Week is a very just beautiful way to start our November. It opens up with, I think, one of the most beautiful songs. Well, I can't say that because there's also beautiful, so many beautiful songs of autumn, but The Colorful Trees is a really, really lovely song. So it's a really lovely way to open up our November. So our overview for Leaf Week, we have a lot of sweet, gentle things and a lot of also lovely ways to celebrate the season. We're going to open up with our beeswax leaf dipping. We have some toy polishing, some leaf cookies. It is a really lovely little week. So you have your Leaf Week supplies here. Now, Leaf Week is your second opportunity to do some beeswax leaf dipping. So our first opportunity was back in September at the end of that month for our autumn festival as we celebrated the coming of autumn. But of course, the leaves turning happens in different times in lots of different places. So that was opportunity number one. Opportunity number two for that beeswax leaf dipping is November week 1 for Leaf Week. So if you did not have a chance to, or if your leaves weren't ready yet, this is your chance to dip those leaves if you want. If your leaves were perfect for September and you got to do that then, and now they're already kind of past, you can also skip that and replace that with Play-Doh. So I'll head into a talk about our story and our songs first before I get into our activity. So our story this week, Leaf Mountain. This is a really, really charming story and a really fun way to celebrate leaves. So Leaf Mountain is this really sweet story. It starts off, the opening scene is this kind of colorful tree scene where Hamilton and Thumbkin are taking just a lovely autumn walk, and they're just admiring the colorful trees. And the colorful trees is just, I mean, it is a perfect autumn walk song to just celebrate the tree. So I would say that your colorful tree song is your kind of theme of the week song, not necessarily your circle time song this week. And it is beautiful. And then Petty Palm is so excited because there is a leaf mountain, which of course for a gnome would be a lot of fun. So he jumps into the leaf pile, and then where does he go? And they cannot find Petty Palm. And then I think Thumbkin dives in after, and so they keep diving in after to see where their friends have gone, and they do not return. So then we're left with Hamilton, who is on his own, and he takes Sister Flame with him and dives into the leaf pile and finds himself underneath the leaf pile in one of Morrison's tunnels. Because of course now we have met our friend Mr. Morrison Mole, and he is a part of the community now. And so he reconnects with his friends, and they go through the tunnels, and then they pop up in Rudabug's living room where Petty Palm and Morrison are playing games and Rudabug's living room. And so it is this fun story. It opens with this beautiful scene, kind of this fun and funny, where did he go? And then they find him at the end in Rudabug's living room. So a lot of fun things happened there. And of course, you get this beautiful image of a giant leaf pile for your children to jump in, and a really, really fun hide and go seek song. So as I already mentioned, Colorful Trees is just a moody, beautiful autumny song. So that one is just so lovely. And then Where Did He Go is so fun. Where did Petty Palm go? Where could he be? This is a really, really fun song that you can use for just hide and seek. So you can replace Petty Palm with any child. So that's kind of just like how we do the birthday song. We swap out the name. You can use that kind of idea of swapping out a child's name in oh, where did Gabriel go? Oh, where could he be? And it's really fun. The words here are just I think, really charmy. So you can use the Where Did He Go song. Even in circle time, you could cover a child in a pile of silks to pretend that they're under the pile of leaves, and then they can pop out at the end and you can sing the song and dance around them. So a really, really fun interactive song that you can use in circle or outside or however you would like. Where Did He Go is a lot of fun. And then our activities this week, we start off with an option of Play-Doh, or if you have not dipped your leaves yet, this is a great opportunity to do so. So you can do your beeswax leaf dipping. I have some tips here. Of course, I always like to remember beeswax is hot. You can, it's just a little more careful of an activity with your little ones, and beeswax is hard to clean. So just prepare your stations appropriately. I personally have a dedicated beeswax pot because it's so hard to clean. So I just have one pot that I just leave the beeswax in. It just goes right in my pantry, and there is a hard level of beeswax. Anytime I want to do leaves, I just heat that up. It's a double boiler. That is just my beeswax pot. I have two dedicated beeswax spoons, and then I don't have to worry about the cleanup. I always am sure to cover everything in maybe parchment paper or wax paper before we get started, and cover clothes with aprons. But if you can, collect those colorful trees, maybe on an autumn walk, and carefully dip those, and those we will use for our leaf garlands. Now, if you don't have leaves that are ready to use, you can also just do Play-Doh and use, and in your leaf garland activity, you can just use green leaves or flowers or whatever you have available. But of course, those just won't last as long as if they're sealed with leaf dipping. It sounds like leaves in Kansas are just starting to turn, so I'm excited to do the wax activity. Good. Yes, I was hoping that by giving you some opportunities at the beginning of the season or at the end of the season, that anywhere with leaves would have a chance to do that. And then our main lesson for Living Arts Day, which of course is kind of our life skills day, is toy polishing. This is a very lovely, just calming activity. We're using beeswax polish. So if you beeswax dipped in the morning, beeswax polish, it just smells lovely. And this is a great opportunity to really have your children come alongside the caring of our things. So we get to tell them about how we care for our things and polishing them with beeswax. And this can be wooden toys. This could be a wooden spoon from your kitchen. My one suggestion is that this should be natural wood and not colored wood. I wouldn't necessarily recommend you using the polish on something like a Grimm's Rainbow, something that's stained or dyed, because sometimes that can rub those natural dyes. So I would definitely recommend natural wooden toys, spoons, bowls, whatever you have available. Get that beeswax polish and rub, and it just makes everything so lovely and rich and beautiful and really brings those things back to life. So I think I always enjoy this, and we like to do it at least once a season with our wooden toys. So it's a really nice, just rhythmical activity that I think your children will really enjoy. Our day 2, of course, are leaf garlands. So if you have dipped your leaves, this is a really simple way to use little clothespins on a string. This is a great little fine motor activity that the children can join along in, with those little clothespins, to just pin them on your string and hang those up to enjoy, to really celebrate the season. So it's simple but lovely activity to give some very natural, beautiful decor for your November. Then our maple leaf sandwich cookies is our recipe this week. This one is a little more involved because we have a few steps of rolling the dough, cutting it out, baking them, and then we have a follow-up activity of actually making the little sandwich cookies. And these are in homage to our Canadian friends, these delicious little maple cookies. I had these when someone came back from Canada, and they're so delicious. So these are kind of in honor of your Canadian maple leaf cookies, which are so scrumptious. So I hope you enjoy these. These are really fun. So with this, just have appropriate expectations of the steps involved in this activity with the rolling and the cutting. And if you have a group, be really gentle with yourself, as far as there might be a lot of people. If you only have 1 or 2 of the cookie cutters, there might be some waiting and sharing. So just prepare that, and just prepare your expectations with your children. Little ones might need a little more assistance using the little cutters. So you can kind of just find what feels best for them. If they're just going to focus on the rolling, and then maybe you take over for the cutting, you can kind of trade off. And again, the goal here is connecting over what you're making, doing things together and making memories. So if you're assisting your child through the little punching of those leaf cookies, that is wonderful as well. And if you have an older sibling, they can help and maybe be a little more independent. I actually am going to pause really quick because I missed some questions here. I know our Florida friends, no leaves. I'm so sorry. Questions on our beeswax polishing. A wooden cutting board is a perfect choice for cutting for beeswax polishing, sorry. And we're slowly moving to wooden toys. Which natural toys do your kids enjoy most? We would love some suggestions. We love even just a few natural blocks. My favorite blocks are actually on our site, our Wondergarten site. They're just multicolored wooden blocks. They're just very versatile. We also adore some wooden figures, wooden peg dolls, wooden animals, and then also some open-ended things like the rainbows or the bridges are also really lovely. We also really love to encourage interconnected toys, so toys that can be used either together or apart. So the little animals can go over the bridge and the little blocks can become little roads, or the little blocks can become play food in your little wooden bowl. So things that can be used imaginatively in different ways rather than just one way would be what I would suggest if you're just embarking on some wooden toy collecting. So one more question here for the beeswax melting. Can you use a candle wax melting pitcher pour? They come in different sections. Oh, that's just a suggestion. Wonderful. All right, thank you. Okay, maple leaf sandwich cookies. We have our adaptations here, and then those are going to be baked the first day, that day 2, and then they're going to be assembled on day 3. So day 3, painting day, we're going to be getting started with leaf rubbing. This is just a classic autumn activity. Of course, this is typically when you'll have your crayons out that day 3 morning, and we are just going to do a lovely, more intentional time with those crayons. Place your leaves vein side up and then a thinner piece of paper on top. The block crayons are just perfect for this. You can use that long side for them to really discover and see the beautiful veins of the leaves, and it's a really, really lovely, lovely activity. So, but thing to note, if you have the thicker drawing paper, sometimes even just thin printer paper works better for this because you really want to be able to see all of those veins come through. And then our day 3 painting, instead of painting, we're going to be assembling those cookies into our little sandwiches. Now this is, again, if you have a group or even just multiple children, this is something that I would suggest you prepare accordingly, especially with your little piping bags here. So I would prepare a piping bag for each child. If you don't have a piping bag, you can use a Ziploc with a little tip cut off so that they can start to begin to build those sandwich cookies, pipe a little swirl, and put those together. So a lot of great little fine motor lessons in there, and of course you can assist them as necessary. Now, when you put these together, they can smoosh. So if you want to smoosh them gently together, and then one little tip before you go to eat them is to chill them for a little bit so that filling can harden, so that when you go to take a bite, it doesn't just splooge everywhere. So the filling will be soft, so you can gently sandwich those together, put them in the fridge for a few minutes to kind of harden up so you can have a little bit better of a eating experience, so you don't get covered in maple filling. But some tips on this, because I have seen questions about maple extract and maple syrup. You can use these a little bit interchangeably. There is imitation maple as well, but I really would encourage you to try to get your hands on real maple extract. But if you can't, you can use a little more maple syrup. The flavor will just be a little less intense. So whatever you can find to make these just kind of mapley will be good. And I think in this, and depending on the brand of your maple extracts, you'll find a different level of lightness or darkness to your cookie. So if your cookies don't turn out quite as dark, the maple extract I used was really dark when we did this. And then the next year I got a different brand and it was lighter, and the cookies turned out much lighter, more like a sugar cookie. So just to let you know, if yours turn out lighter, that's fine. It just might be the different brand of maple extract. So just a little tip there so you know what to look for. There we have it, Leaf Week. It's a really, again, simple week. These little sandwich cookies are scrumptious. Some nice, a nice opportunity for nature walks to collect your leaves for dipping, or that leaf garland. And then of course the leaf rubbing is a really, really lovely activity. So I'm gonna do a little open. Any more questions on Leaf Week before I head on to Rain Week? I don't see any. Wonderful. All right, I'm gonna head on to Rain Week. Rain Week is a lovely story, and of course we get to celebrate the coming of Sister Rain because she's coming whether we like it or not. But a really fun story to just kind of celebrate the season of rain, because of course here in the Pacific Northwest it is rainy season and it will rain until June. So Rain Week, here we go, Rain Week. We have some fun things planned. All right, our story this week, Sister Rain. This is another kind of funny story with Rudabug and Mr. Morrison Mole, where Rudabug, his house gets flooded by Sister Rain. So he is sitting there and it's drip, drip, drop, and he's like, and then Sister Rain keeps falling and crash goes his ceiling. And of course, this is right after he has finally repaired his home from Mr. Morrison Mole burrowing through it. So he's finally relaxing in his fixed living room, and then it comes crashing down again. And so then he is swept away by the rain, and Mr. Mole comes along with him on his mattress. Now, of course, Mr. Mole cannot see very well. He's a blind mole, and so he has no idea where they are. He thinks they're in the pond, but they're in the living room getting swept out. So a lot of fun. When Nathaniel gets around to recording this one, this will be quite an entertaining audiobook, I presume. So a lot of fun, and then they end up splashed out into Puddle Bloom's pond, who greets them warmly with freshly baked blueberry muffins from Petty Palm, and they get all warm and dry inside. So this is a really fun story for your children to imagine them splooshing down and splashing on a little mattress and ending up in Puddle Bloom's pond before they get welcomed inside. So really fun little story. And our only song, this is, there's a few weeks in November that actually only have one song, which is rare. Usually you have 2 or 3 songs to choose from. So both Rain Week and Pie Week only have one song. So you only have one to choose from. So Sister Rain is it was one of the first songs Nathaniel wrote way back when. And it is a sweet little simple song. And this one does have some great little motions. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you. So our Sister Rain song. Now I will say, in the process of recording it, the tempo got kind of speeded up, so it's a little bit quicker on the album. But if you're going to sing this song in your circle time or to your children, I do like to sing it a little bit slower, especially with the motions. So I will demonstrate Sister Rain motions for you now. Sister Rain, falling from the sky, brings to us drops of rain from the clouds so high. Rivers rush, I'm gonna forget my music. Puddles filling up, rivers rushing down, waters flowing all around. Of course, you can practice a few times ahead of time so you don't mess up your words, but it's a really fun one. They love the rivers rushing, and it's just fun to just, Sister Rain, she's comforting, she's sweet. Really sweet song there. So we open up for our activities with some simple blue Play-Doh. Of course, the theme this week is Watery. So add some blue dye to your Play-Doh if you would like. Of course, if you have leftover cinnamon clove Play-Doh or whatever Play-Doh you have, you can always reuse those. But if you would like that theme, you can do your blue Play-Doh. Or I know some people might skip the blue Play-Doh and do more of like a watery sensory bin. Totally up to you, but here's that blue Play-Doh recipe if you prefer to do some blue Play-Doh. Then I love this one. Our life skill this week is window washing. This is like a very watery, great kind of way to incorporate Sister Rain in a really practical way for some life skills. So we're going to use window crayons. And of course, the first part of this activity is that they could just draw with window crayons and try to keep them to the windows. But if you don't have some really big windows, you can also use a mirror or anything kind of hard, flat surface. So allow them to draw on the windows. And then of course, then comes the cleaning process. You can do this 2 ways, either with a squirt bottle or with a very wet rag for them to clean and wash the windows. It's watery, it's fun. And then of course you have drips coming down the windows, which looks like Sister Rain outside. Now, some tips on cleaning up when it's time to finish the cleanup. Sometimes people have said, oh, these window crayons are impossible to get off. There's a technique to get it where they just wipe right off. So if you take a damp rag and try to wipe your window clean, it will feel impossible. It'll just smear everything around. So the trick to get window crayons off is you really want a sopping wet rag or a lot of sprayed water, and then it will just wipe clean, and then you take a dry rag and wipe right after, and it works beautifully. So as they're just experiencing the cleaning, of course you can use damp rags, whatever, they can just kind of loosen up that pigment and wash, 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 wash. But when it's time for the final cleanup, get it really, really, really wet. It'll wipe right off, and then follow with a dry rag. It'll be beautiful. So just some cleanup tips for you there. And this should be fun. Kids love this one. They can get It can get messy because there's water and window crayons, but it tends to be a fun one. Then our walnut boats, day 2, our little nature craft is our walnut boats. These are just classic. I adore these. The kids always love them. If you have leftover walnut shells back from our Bread Week walnut cracking activity, you can get those back out, or you can begin this activity that same way. If you got a kit and you have a fresh batch of walnuts, you can get out that hammer again and begin this activity with the walnut cracking. However, to get a nice half walnut, you do kind of need to crack it carefully. So as the adult, you might want to take a knife and just open them up so you have some clean ones to make your boats. But of course, the children also always tend to adore the chance to crack those open. So I'm going to just show you a little tip here. With these, they are very pretty self-explanatory. I do have step-by-step instructions here, but I just kind of want to show you how this looks. So we have these little candle beeswax sheets are really lovely. They're really versatile craft, and I craft, what's it called? Ingredient? Not ingredient. Craft resource. And so you're just going to push this into your little halved walnut shell. And then I like to use just a little tool. This is just a thin crochet hook to just kind of get that little hole in there, so by the time you're ready to put that stick in, it just goes right in, because if you use the stick to make the hole, it can kind of snap. So I just like to just use a little tool to get that hole in there. And of course, as you're doing this with your hands, it will warm up that wax to make it nice and soft. And then of course you can add your finished leaf. Now again, this is one that works best if you have a beeswaxed leaf. So if you've done that beeswax dipping activity, a beeswax leaf will hold up a lot better, especially if they're taking it outside. But if you don't, a fresh leaf will also work. Even a fresh green leaf will work, but again, it won't last quite as long if you're using fresh leaves. So our walnut boats. Now, of course, with these, we don't have huge expectations that they will actually float. So if you want to try to get them to float, you can try to get the balance just right, but these do work best as you can just hold onto the little stick and kind of play along. So you can kind of help prepare your children that this is more of a toy, this is more for imaginative play. You can put a blue silk down in your playroom and they can play out the story with this little walnut boat. So a really fun one. And our main lesson for baking day is our blueberry muffins. I think this is a really sweet way to add little drops of rain, of course your blueberries, and of course what Petty Palm baked in our story to welcome a cold and wet Morrison and Rudabug into Puddle Bloom's house. This is a really lovely, just scrumptious little blueberry muffin recipe that I use a lot. Just it's low, I think it's no refined sugar, naturally, the honey and maple syrup, frozen blueberries. When you're doing this with your kids, I do love to give them blueberries to drop in, and we sing Sister Rain's song as they drop in the little drops of rain of blueberries. So it's a fun way to integrate that song into your baking and makes a really lovely little healthy snack muffin. All right, and then our painting day, we're just gonna start with crayons. Again, kind of just let yourself relax and enjoy some drawing time with your children. And then our painting day, also very simple, wet on wet blue. And we did something similar to this for Wind Week, but we did the blowing. But this time, just offer blue. It's just a very watery experience, and you can, with a painting story, you could talk about the rain dripping down from the sky and then filling up and rushing down, so you can demonstrate some of those motions from the story and from the song, and just let them kind of soak in the wateriness of Rain Week. And there we have Rain Week. Okay, any quick questions on Rain Week? I do see a tip from Leaf Week that you used almond extract instead of maple extract on the leaf cookies, and it turned out amazing. So that is a great suggestion. Yes, if you cannot find the maple extract, you can just replace with more vanilla extract or almond extract, and they'll be delicious. If there's not any specific questions for Rain Week, I know a lot of these are just kind of lovely, simple weeks for you all, so not a ton of moving parts. Before we get into the second half of our month, which have a little bit more going on, so we'll get into that. All right, are we ready for Pie Week? One of my favorite weeks of the year. Pie, I love Pie Week. So I am gonna kind of preview the last 2 weeks as far as Thanksgiving planning as a whole, and just kind of wanted to let you know how I designed these 2 weeks to assist you, especially for my US friends, in preparation for Thanksgiving. So Pie Week is intentionally the week ahead of Thanksgiving, because the whole point for Pie Week and Feast Week, especially again for those of us who are preparing for Thanksgiving, is I wanted to intentionally write in these activities to make the preparation for Thanksgiving intentional and spread out and calm, and not a big sprint at the end. So we're starting ahead of time with making some pies. And with this, I intentionally want you to prepare if you're making pies for Thanksgiving, this is your week that you can begin to get started. And as I go through the 2 recipes, I'll kind of let you know which ones can go in the freezer, and how you can kind of use this to actually get ahead, so that by the time Thanksgiving comes, your pies are done, your recipes are beautiful. So these 2 weeks are kind of this big prep for the feast. And in the story itself for Pie Week, they are getting started for the Thanksgiving prep. All right, so Pie Week. I love pie. So our story this week, they are preparing for the feast. So they are going to be making pies for the autumn feast, and Hamilton, of course, has never made a pie. And what the fun thing about this story is that it really gets to celebrate each of the gnomes and friends' strengths. Because at the beginning, it's all right, it's time to make pie. And it kind of all goes wrong, because to make a pie is delicate. You have to be very delicate with the crust. If you work it too hard, it won't turn out. If your hands are too warm, it won't turn out. So it's a very delicate process. And we see, with Rudabug's big strong hands, with Morrison's big strong hands, and with everyone's kind of, if they all start just making one together, it just doesn't go well at first. But then Pottlebloom comes in, and he gives them each a specific task to kind of create a pie assembly line that really focuses on each of their strengths. So for the mashing of the pumpkin, we get Rudabug or Morrison doing that. For chopping the butter, and each of them gets assigned a role, and then together they make the perfect pie. So it's a really great opportunity to talk about celebrating our strengths and what we're good at and our talents, and how sometimes when we try to do something all on our own, it doesn't turn out as well. But when we celebrate teamwork, when we work together and celebrate all of our different strengths, we can really come together to create something wonderful and delicious. So it's a really, really sweet story about celebrating each of their strengths. And then, of course, in the process, Hamilton creates a pecan pie, which they had never had before, and they love it. So the pecan pie recipe is not in the book because it's a trickier one to make with kids, but there are 2 things in our community that you can find. So in the recipe support section, you can find additional recipes, and I have my maple brown sugar pecan pie recipe in there. It is the best pecan pie you've ever had. It is so lovely, and it is all maple syrup and brown sugar, no corn syrup, and it is absolutely delicious. It is a trickier one to do because you have to do a blind bake, and you have to, cook it. So that's why it's not in the book, because it's not as friendly to make with kids, but it is delicious. And then also in that same section, I have a full video tutorial, like a half an hour long straight, of me making a pie crust to walk you through how to make the pie crust recipe in here. Because again, pie crust is tricky. It can be fun, but it can be tricky. So there's tricks. So if you've never done pie crust before, find that video and watch it, and it'll really help you walk through all the little tips and things to work for. So our song this week, of course, is Let's Make a Pie. Now, I got to help write the lyrics for this song because, of course, Nathaniel doesn't really know how to make a pie. But pie is one of my specialties. So let's make a pie. If you want to focus on the just let's make a pie today kind of chorus with your children, to kind of repeat that is really fun. But the actual lyrics of the verses actually instruct you how to make a pie. So if you're, again, newer to making a pie, those lyrics, and as you sing through those, it will give you some tips along the way to remember to make a successful pie. So I hope this song is a helpful, instructional song to help you make the best pie possible. And if you are a baker, let me know how I did. Let me know if this checks out for how you bake a pie. So, it's a really fun one to sing along to as you're making pie. So of course, this is more of, you can use it in circle time if you'd like, but it's very good around the table. Now for circle time this week, something that Nathaniel would always love to do is to designate the kids as ingredients. So, okay, you're gonna be the butter and you're gonna be the flour, and they act it out with their bodies, and he mixes them up, and it's a hoot. So if you want to make a pie with your kids, that's a fun active circle time game. And then of course you can use this song as you make pie this week. So Pie Week, cinnamon clove Play-Doh is how we start off. And of course this is a great preface to using that dough. You can begin to make little mini pies, practicing your rolling or cutting if you're going to do lattice work, all of that. So this is a great time to just kind of practice some pie making with your cinnamon clove Play-Doh, or again, whatever Play-Doh you have available or leftover or anything you want to reuse. Then our first getting into pie, our main lesson, day one, is making the dough. So we have our recipe here, pie dough. I have a full portion, which makes 2 pie crusts. So if you're going to do a full apple pie, you need the 2. That's that. And the child's portion is 1 pie crust. So you can use that to make 1 pumpkin, like the shell of a pumpkin pie or the shell of a pecan pie. Or you can also use these to make mini pies. Now, Nathaniel's favorite is the mini pies. The ratio of crust to filling is really, really nice. So you can also use these to create little ones. If you did get the November kit, or if you're going to get a November kit, you'll get the little mini pie tins and the little cutters to make mini pies. They are so scrumptious. I think my favorite is pumpkin pie as mini pies instead of the big ones, because just the ratio of crust to filling is so lovely. So there's your pie dough recipe. Be sure to watch that video if you're newer to pie crust. My big tip and trick for successful pie crust is a spray bottle, because essentially what you want to do is you want to add as little water as possible, because if you add too much water, your crust will be so tough. It'll be like crust jerky, like you won't be able to bite through it. So you want to add as little water as possible. So using that spray bottle moistens the flour without over adding. So you spray and you stir and you spray and you stir, and you want to continue to do that until, as you hear in the song, until the flour holds. So you grab some of that crust and it should look crumbly, and if you pinch it, if you hold it together in your hand, when you let go, it should just hold together, and that's how you know you're ready for the next step. So the children love the spray bottle, spray, 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 and you mix. There also is a little bit of apple cider vinegar in the water mixture. Again, that just, won't taste the vinegar once it's baked, but it again helps to moisten that pie crust dough without over adding the water. So a lot of tips in there. So you're going to make your pie dough, and then of course it has to chill. I also, some tips as far as bringing it together. You can use beeswax wrap, or I do just love using just a tea towel, or of course you can use plastic wrap. That bringing it together is kind of an essential technique that you'll see me demonstrate in that video as well. So pie dough making, we have a great alternative gluten-free recipe that Jessica developed, because pie dough can be tricky. And then the next morning, we're gonna be making the apple pie filling. So if you wanna get out your spiral peeler again, you can chop up the apples. What I like to do is I actually like to have the little filling already in a bowl, and they do the apples and chop it up and then just add it and toss it. And then our main lesson for baking day is assembling pies. So I like to have little, for my classroom setting, I'll have the apple filling they just made, as well as little measuring cups full of pumpkin pie filling, and they'll get to roll out their little pies, and we like to make the mini pies in the classroom, and they're really, really lovely. Then we have our classic apple pie recipe right here for you, and my some adaptations, and my favorite, Miss Lisa's favorite, pumpkin pie. This is it's a very spiced pie. I like to go a little heavy-handed on my spices, so it's silky, it's spiced, it's just delicious. It's my absolute favorite, and of course you see them pictured here as minis, which are just the most little scrumptious little thing ever. Now, 4 tips on preparation, right? So if you're doing this ahead of Thanksgiving week, here's my tips for preparation. Apple pies can be fully made and assembled and stick in the freezer. So if the next week you're planning on having an apple pie for Thanksgiving, I would say use the apple pie recipe, make your pie crust, fully make your apple pie with your children, and put it in the freezer. And then it's done. Then the next week you can just pop it in the oven while you're working on turkey or whatever. So that is one of my kind of preparation tips. The apple pies can be fully made, assembled, complete in the freezer. For pumpkin pies, on pie week, I do like to make these little mini pumpkins as a part of the process to just, you know, eat those fresh that week, but you can't really make a pumpkin pie for the week before. But what I do like to do for the pumpkin pies for my actual Thanksgiving prep is roll it out and make your pie shell and then put that in the freezer. So if I'm gonna make 2 pumpkin pies for Thanksgiving, I'll make my pie crust, roll it out, and make my full pie shell and keep that in the freezer. So after pie week, I have my full apple pies in the freezer and I have my full pumpkin shells in the freezer. So then on Thanksgiving week, I just need to fill, because making the pumpkin pie filling is pretty simple. So I just need to pour that in, bake them, pop the apples in the oven, apple pies in the oven, and it just makes for a really easy week. So those are my tips for preparing for Thanksgiving feast if you're preparing for that. And then of course, pie week is like my pie crust extravaganza week. I just make all the pie crusts that I'm going to use for the rest of the year. So those are my tips for anyone preparing for Thanksgiving and how to prepare. What about for the pecan pie prep? So same thing for the pumpkin. You can't really do that ahead of time, but you can make the shell ahead of time. So same thing, roll out and make your pie shell and pop that in the freezer. And then when you're ready to make your pecan pie, that one does need to be blind baked. So you'll line it with parchment and fill it with either the beans or pie weights or whatever you want to use. Blind bake that, but you don't want to blind bake that ahead of time either. So just the pecan and the pumpkins, you can freeze the unbaked pie shells, and then those pie shells are going to be ready to fill and bake on Thanksgiving week. But the apple pie, the whole thing can freeze, which makes it really easy. All right, and then pie week, painting day, super simple. Crayons and watercolor painting. You can use whatever colors you want. If you want to offer a few wet on wet watercolors, if you want to offer a palette of watercolors, you can, but just enjoy a very simple drawing and painting day, especially after all of the commotion of making pie. Whew, you're probably going to want a little break, so that's why I threw in just simple, just draw, just paint. That's all you need to do. All right, any questions for pie week before I move on to our feast? Right, I don't see any questions typing. Alrighty, I will head on to feast week. All right, so this is the culmination of autumn, which is crazy that we're already talking about this. So the autumn feast, of course, if you're in the US, this is Thanksgiving, but it is also just a lovely story to just share about the gratitude of the harvest and saying goodnight to the garden. There's a few, I'll talk about the songs this week too, that are a few kind of special points. So our story this week, and this week I'll show you our little craft. This week, the autumn feast. This story is longer. It has part 1, part 2. So just as you prepare to read this story, of course, the audiobook will be, I'm not sure if he'll release it in 1 part or 2 parts, but this is a longer story because it finishes up the whole season. So just be aware of that as you're planning your story reading with your kids. With younger ones, you might want to split this one up over 2 days. It might be a little bit long to read all the way from part 1 to part 2. So we have them preparing for the autumn feast, and we have this whole kitchen prep. It starts actually with this scene right here. Thumbkin sitting on his mushroom, fiddling My Merry Mushrooms. So this is where this scene comes from and where this comes in. This is the morning of the autumn feast. Thumbkin is playing his violin on his mushrooms, singing about his merry mushrooms. It's a really sweet, little lovely song. So he's just singing about his mushrooms, and then of course he plucks one up and heads inside to make, to start cooking for the day. So they are inside and they are getting excited to start cooking. And it is, if a Thanksgiving morning, everyone's in the kitchen, everyone's cooking, everyone's chopping and baking, and it's all a big, really fun thing. And they're just chopping and baking and cooking, and it is a lot of fun. And then Hamilton asks, is it really necessary to make this much food? And everything stops. And then we have this incredible song that Nathaniel wrote, Around the Table. And it's about, food is not just about how good it tastes. It's about who's around the table. It's about bringing friends and family together. And they all sing this lovely song about really what this means and how food brings people together. And it's not about how much it tastes. It's not about just cleaning your plate. It's not just about something yummy. It's about bringing friends and family together around the table. So this song, I think, especially in our culture right now, we're kind of unpacking a lot of, old food disorders that we grew up with as kids, and all of this hyper nutritionification of food, where really for a child to just celebrate how food brings us together. And it's not about this or that, it's just about the connection of the food. And I think it's such a lovely song, again, ahead of a big feast where there's tons of food, but just to realize that the whole purpose is connection and friends and family. So they sing this together, and it is just lovely. And then, of course, something I love about this story and this week is we have Thumbkin and Rudabug make a green bean casserole together with Thumbkin's mushrooms and Rudabug's green beans. So they come together to create that recipe, which is one of my favorite Thanksgiving recipes, which is in the book. So really delicious thing there, but it's fun how it's integrated into the story with those two characters. So part one is your preparation. It's the kitchen scene, right? And then part two is the actual autumn feast. So they're together and they're really celebrating. Now, you'll see how these two songs, we have a lot of songs this week, right? And they're integrated. But one thing that is fun is in part two, you'll hear the blessing and Garden Goodnight. Now, those songs might be familiar from our Daily Songs album, but both of these songs were actually originally written for this song, for this scene right here. And then the blessing, we thought, actually, this is just lovely, so we can actually adapt this and we didn't even need to adapt it. We just added it to the Daily Songs album as a blessing you could sing every day. But it was originally written as the autumn blessing for Thanksgiving. So the blessing song really is, in our heads, our Thanksgiving song, because we're showing gratitude. Everyone is welcome here. Table set, food is served. Fill your cups with cheer. So that song was written as this Thanksgiving song. And originally it was Thanksgiving song. Originally it was called Autumn Blessing. And then we realized this is really sweet. We could use this any day. So it's on the Daily Songs album, but its original place in the story is right here for their autumn feast. So you can kind of just get a little more sense of how that song was written. And then we have this just lovely song, this lovely story about the friends around the table and sharing what they're grateful for. And so they go around and they're sharing how they're grateful for their new friends who have joined them. They're grateful for Mr. Mole. They're grateful for Hamilton, who are now a part of their community. And it's really, really sweet. So they eat and, they cheers their cups. And then at the end, there's this very kind of poignant ending where it's time to say goodnight to the garden. And of course, for Rudabug, his gardening season is over. He's the gardening gnome. So it's this very bittersweet time for him. And he, the air is getting colder. The Winter King is wakening. Winter is coming. And so the very last scene, you see Rudabug kind of standing in front of his garden beds that are now covered in a bed of leaves, ready for the cold nights of winter. And he sings to his garden goodnight. Now, this song, Garden Goodnight, again, you'll recognize the tune from the Goodnight song we have in our Daily Songs. But again, this song was actually written as Garden Goodnight right here. And then, of course, we realized this is a really sweet tune. This could be, if we change some of the lyrics to Darling Goodnight, this could be a really lovely lullaby. And so we adapted it and added it to the Daily Songs album. But the song was originally written as Rudabug singing goodnight to his garden. And I think the lyrics here are just really beautiful. So you can picture, burly Rudabug having this moment, saying goodnight to his garden, kind of preparing himself mentally for the cold months ahead. And that he won't, he says, I'll see you again in the spring to his garden. So it's a really, really sweet way to close out the season and to say goodnight to the garden. So again, if you are in Canada and you are having your Thanksgiving soon, this part right here is something that you might want to save for the end of the season. Now, there is part one, part two. So if you want to use part one of the Autumn Feast story for your Canadian Thanksgiving, as you prepare and your children are going to see you working in the kitchen and getting ready for the feast, that is great. But then there's parts of this that you might want to save for the very last week of November before we head into winter. So then, of course, we have our songs here that I mentioned, Around the Table, Lovely, Autumn Blessing, and Garden Goodnight, all of those lovely, lovely songs, and Merry Mushrooms in there as well. So lots of fun songs that week for you to just enjoy. All right, so Feast week, we're going to start with our Play-Doh. Of course, you'll probably have leftover Play-Doh at this point because it might be a busy week of cooking, so you could just pull out that leftover Play-Doh and have your children play with that. Now, again, for Feast week, I want to just look at this overview here. with you all, because this is a week that you do not have to do what I tell you to do if you do not want to. So this week, the way I wrote this is to intentionally have you preparing for your autumn feast so that your children can come alongside, and it's woven into your homeschool week that your children are working alongside of you to rhythmically work ahead to culminate for your Thanksgiving Day or for your autumn feast, right? Now, think ahead on what you'll actually be making for your autumn feast or your Thanksgiving, right? You can use the recipes that I have here. They're some of my favorite recipes. They're delicious. But if you're in charge of bringing X, Y, or Z to a family Thanksgiving, swap those and use those as the opportunity to have your children come alongside the preparation. So this week it's less about these specific recipes and more about bringing our children alongside the preparation of a feast or a festival and showing them the work that goes into it and the planning ahead of time. Okay, I know I need to make this casserole for Thursday, so I'm gonna start chopping this and we're gonna, prepare this because this recipe can go in the fridge and all of that, and they can see the planning that it takes to really prepare for a big feast and a big celebration. So swap these out with whatever recipes you actually need to get done this week, or if it's just a busy week, you can be looser on your homeschooling rhythms, but the hope is that you can lean on these homeschooling rhythms if you want to integrate these things so that it doesn't feel like one big crazy day, all right? So I'll walk you through how I have laid it out, but give yourself freedom here for whatever you need this week to look like, all right? So the groceries here is all your grocery list if you're gonna be using these recipes. And this kind of note here kind of reiterates what I just said about if you're preparing for Thanksgiving. So back to our activities. So that morning, cinnamon, clove, Play-Doh. Our main lesson, our life skill that day one is chopping beans and mushrooms for rutabaga and Thumbkins green bean casserole. Now, this is the best green bean casserole I've ever had. This is my favorite recipe. I refined it. It's the best. A lot of times green bean casseroles are with the cream of whatever soup and canned beans, and it's just not anyone's favorite. But this, I tell you, give it a chance because it is rich and it is delicious. It's all fresh ingredients. It is so savory. Whenever I make it, Nathaniel just wants to eat it straight from the pot before I even make it into a casserole. It's so delicious. So give it a chance. And again, it's a fun way for children to, the beans and mushrooms are really easy to chop with a wooden knife or a child-safe knife. So it's a really great way for them to get involved. And again, it's Thumbkins mushrooms. It's rutabaga green beans. They can picture it coming together in the story. So it's also a great way to get them maybe a little excited about eating some vegetables. Chop those beans and mushrooms. I have my green bean casserole recipe for you right here. It's delicious. This one can be made ahead of time. So if you make the kind of casserole part, you can just keep it in the fridge for a few days, or you can freeze it. Keep the topping separate so it doesn't get soggy. You can do the topping fresh day of, but this is a great make ahead recipe. So I actually make this on this day one. We chop the beans and mushrooms, we make it. I usually make a big double batch and I put it in the fridge for a few days ahead, or a freezer if we're doing something a little later. And then whenever it's, Thanksgiving Day, I'll make the crispy topping and pop that in the oven. So this is a great make ahead recipe, all fresh ingredients, delicious. Then our day two, our activity, we are weaving our placemats, and I'm going to go ahead and do this one right here just to show you. This is a really sweet way to make a lovely little handmade placemat for your children. And as you watch, it'll also kind of give you a sense of if you want to use some of these techniques for Pie Week. If you're doing a lattice, you can do this too. So this is our finished little placemat here, and it's a really lovely way for them to just do some weaving and make a lovely, sweet little placemat. So I will show you kind of how this is done and how you prepare this, just so you can see. So you start with one sheet of felt and you cut it up to about 1 inch here. So my kids always love to call this the wishy-washy, the car wash. So you can get your little car wash felt here and then lay this out, and then take your other colors and just cut a bunch of strips. So you'll have a few that you cut like this and a few cut into full strips. And then your child can choose which colors they would like to do. And then here is a great way to do lattice work, either on a pie or on here, is that you flip back every other one. So up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and you can have your children begin to kind of look at that pattern. And then we're going to find a color, this lovely color, and we're going to tuck this little friend right into bed. We're going to tuck them into bed, all cozy up at the top, and we're going to say good night, good night, good night, and we're going to tuck them all into bed. And then we're going to switch our patterns. So down, up. So we want to cover up the color that we just saw. So we see this red, we're going to make sure we can't even see it anymore. We're going to hide that color now. Hide it, hide it, hide it, and then we're going to choose another color, and we're going to tuck them right into bed. And then we say good night, good night. And you can see how it just creates this beautiful lattice. So now we have this yellow. Now we're going to hide our yellow. Goodbye, yellow. Goodbye. And it just creates a really easy way to for them to kind of identify this pattern and to join along in making a lovely little placemat. Good night, good night, good night. And there you see it come together. So you can kind of see how that comes together and creates this lovely little lattice placemat. And then to seal it off, you just take a masking tape and just kind of fold over the masking tape along the edges to secure it so it doesn't fall apart. And then you have this lovely, lovely little placemat. So you can use this technique for your placemats, or you can also use that technique for an actual top of a pie if you'd like to do a lattice pie, because it's a really great way for children to be able to identify the patterns. And it's just a very simple fine motor skill instead of actually like kind of trying to weave things in. And they love tucking those goodnight. So it's a little sweet thing there. So very fun little one, and they're sweet little keepsakes and they're sweet little autumn placemats. So it's a very simple activity that I just adore. It's a really sweet way to decorate your table with your children. Again, part of that preparation of, okay, we have a feast coming up. We're making the food, we're making the decorations. You can find your little yarn pumpkins or your apples from the weeks before and set everything out, even your little corn dolls. And so you can kind of culminate your decorations with everything you've made throughout the weeks of your autumn curriculum. Then baking day, our dinner rolls, y'all. These are the best rolls you'll ever have in your life. just take my word for it. These are so delicious. So each recipe creates one set of this eight rolls, and I love just putting them in a little round pan, and it creates this beautiful little flower. These are delicious. So in a similar way with any of our bread recipes, I like to just prepare the dough ahead of time, get it rising, and then when it's time to bring my children along, punch it down, divide it up, and they can roll and shape the rolls. Now I do have some tips here on how to successfully shape a dinner roll, because if you just roll it up and plop it in, it won't have that kind of nice taut top. So you want to flip it over and pull, and we want to create this nice tight little roll. So you can see how you pull and pinch the bottom. The kids love to pinch, so that you can see here it's a nice sharp, just a nice taut, smooth little top. And then you put them in your pan like this, and then they'll get nice and tall and fluffy and delicious and look just like this. Now, definitely brush them with butter right when they're out of the oven. They're so delicious. Now with these though, because they're a taller roll, sometimes you just keep an eye on them to make sure they're not getting too warm. Sometimes I even put the pan on another baking sheet so that it doesn't get too brown on the bottom, because you want them to bake long enough so that they're really done, but you also don't want them to get overdone. So just a few tips on that, but they are so yummy, so yummy. And then day 3, painting day, this would essentially be your feast day. So this would probably be Thursday for us in the US. So this kind of culminates with, this is your feast day. So that morning, the activity I have is just mashing potatoes. So you can boil your whole russet potatoes, give it to your children with some butter and milk, and they can use a masher to help you mash up the potatoes. But of course, whatever you're doing that morning, try to bring them along if you're preparing for a feast, and do whatever needs to get done. Yeah, so simple. Mash your potatoes and then have your autumn feast. Set your placemats, set your food, and enjoy your feast together. Sing your blessing, enjoy who's around the table, share what you're all grateful for, share some memories of the year of autumn that you've shared together, and then we'll say good night to the garden. And guys, there is your autumn curriculum. Oh, I can't believe it. Yeah, that's it. And so I have some additional autumn resources at the back, but that closes out our autumn season together. What a fun time. We end with our garden goodnight song here as we say goodnight to the garden. So incredible that we're already talking about the end of autumn. Can't even believe it. But it's a really, really sweet way to end the season. All right, any questions for me at the end of this? We're almost at time. I thought it was a nicely timed live chat here. We're all almost at noon here, so I'll stay around for any just relevant questions on our November curriculum. Of course, upcoming, we have our winter planning session. So same thing as our autumn planning. Open up your calendars or planners or whatever, and I'm going to go through all of the themes of those weeks, any story continuity, give you everything you need to know for any shuffling you might want to do, and how the weeks align with holidays, because of course December has a lot of fun themed things leading up to Christmas time or winter festival or winter solstice, all of those things. So I want to make sure you're fully aware of everything, what to expect. I am new to this community. Do you have a suggestion for the felt? I can see that it is not as firm as other felt. You can use any felt you want for this. We do have felt available on our site that I believe might be a little thicker than this. It can be thick. If you want to use thick felt, you can totally use thick felt. This is just what I had. This is leftover from a few years ago when we did this activity. So felt can be any felt. You can go to the craft store. You can get some online. Of course, true wool felt is going to just be nicer and just have a better feel to it if you can get it. Winter starts December week 1, so our winter curriculum, the first week is that December week 1. We have decorating week. It's a lot of fun. So, and this should line right up for take you right into December. So we'll have this December plan or winter planning in a few weeks, and then December overview after that. And I also will be doing an Advent overview as well. The same day I do that December overview, afterwards I'll take a little break and then come right back on for an Advent overview, because I would love to just let you all know how you can prepare for a really intentional Advent season. There's some kind of Waldorf-y traditions you can do, but I am also going to kind of speak to the Christian community here for how to really prepare a really intentional Christ-centered Advent as well, for those of you who might want to join for that. So a lot of fun tips. Advent is a really special time, so I want to make sure you have what you need to prepare for that, because of course we have all of December to prepare for Christmas, but Advent can sometimes sneak up because you start right at the beginning of December. So all of that is coming. So winter planning, December overview, Advent overview, all of those things are coming up here very soon. Which is very exciting, but I hope you all have everything you need to confidently close out your autumn season. Yay, lots of excitement for Advent. And would a mini tart tin work instead of a mini pie tin? You can certainly, I'm assuming that's kind of the fluted one. That can work. You can really experiment, especially with the mini pies. It doesn't have to be perfect. So if you use whatever you have and fill those up. You can also use muffin tins for a mini pie. You won't fill it up all the way, but you can just use the bottom of a muffin tin for a mini pie as well. That works really well. Lots of excitement about Advent planning. So excited to hear the excitement. That always makes me happy to hear. So lots of fun planning activities coming up. Otherwise, thank you all for joining. Always lovely to have you here with me, and lovely to just go over this to make sure you have everything you need. As I mentioned, we'll be clipping this out just like we did the October overview, so you can easily rewatch week by week, or rewatch just some song or craft demonstrations to make that easy for you. You can find that in the replay library. Otherwise, as always, stay tuned. Keep an eye on the community for any updates happening. But otherwise, thank you. This was a lot of fun, and we will see you in just a few weeks for our winter planning session. One more big question here before I wrap up. Can you give us a little more information about the school grade curriculum? We do have a really in-depth chat in our replay library about the first grade curriculum. So definitely go look and find that, or it might be pinned, but we did a full discussion. So that will answer all of your questions much better than I could do here right now at the end. So definitely look for that because it is we're rolling in that, and it's been a lot of fun this year already, but a lot of questions you can get answered there. So thank you all again for joining, and I will see you in a few weeks. Have a lovely end to your autumn, friends.